Hey, Greg from VPEN back again, and in this video we're going to cover off on attending your doctor's appointments. So this would be you've already applied online, you've done your paperwork where you talk about causation or why you think the military caused your injury or your condition, as well as talked about your how it affects your quality of life. You've gone online and you've looked up the table of disabilities and you looked at all of the relevant information to prepare for your doctor's appointment. So you've got your causation statement ready to go. You've got your job description as well as all the descriptions of the times, your medical history around how you develop that condition. You've got that all written down, and you're ready to show up for your doctor's appointment. Just a point to note before I carry on, I'm saying doctor. Just keep in mind that it doesn't always have to be a doctor. It can be a doctor's and a general practitioner, GP. It can be a nurse practitioner. It can be a physician's assistant in some provinces, depending on the local laws. It can also be a chiropractor. It can be a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist. It can be an audiologist, and so on and so forth. So depending on what it is that you're applying for and the claim that you're applying for, you can find one that can diagnose and sign off on the particular forms that you have. If you're at all unsure, please reach out to me or Ben, and we'll be happy to clarify if that particular one can. Particular like medical professional can sign off on the thing that you're doing, but as a general rule, GPs and nurse practitioners can sign off on just about everything. Not quite, but just about everything. So if you are going to a family doctor or a nurse practitioner, then odds are that they can sign off on it. Again, not 100% of the time, but for most of them. In fact, almost every single one. Okay, so what to expect at the doctor's office. So first things first, I'll get out of the way of the meme. I'm aware of the effect I have on spines with the that's funny to me and you presumably, or at least not maybe not funny, but you at least get the joke there. Um, your doctor wouldn't necessarily get that, right? So they don't know that's a rucksack. They don't know whatever, right? So your doctor's no fucking clue what your military career was like, what you did, they might have some idea if you were an infantry soldier or an artillery soldier, but if you were an AVN tech or a bosun or a Mars officer or a cook, they probably don't know what your career was like day to day. And even if you do have one of those more cliche ones like infantry soldier or whatever, they probably really don't know day to day what it's all about. So make sure that you're being respectful and explaining that to them as they understand it. Okay. Uh, you're going to require multiple doctor's appointments. With the exception of a handful of things, you're probably going to need at least a doctor's appointment to meet with the doctor and say, hey, this is my condition. They'll say, great, go get some testing done. You'll go get that testing, and then you'll have probably at least one or two other appointments after the fact to review the test results, get your diagnosis, and have them fill out the form. So this is a bit of a process. Just go in expecting that. And again, I mentioned testing. You're going to require some sort of testing as part of VAC policy. You need to have some sort of documented proof that confirms that you have that diagnosis. Excuse me. So if you have whatever, call it osteoarthritis in your knees or something like that, right? They're going to need an X-ray showing that. You made an ultrasound, you made an MRI, blood work, whatever it is. Sometimes that testing is there to rule out other things. So like let's say you have, whatever, call it like a high blood pressure or something like that. They might want to rule out other things in order for them to know that it's like the cause of your high blood pressure is the military service. Um, and again, just remember that your doctor's probably not going to complete the form on day one, right? That with the exception of that, maybe with if you're going to get your hearing checked, you walk into an audiologist office, they do your hearing test, they talk to you for a bit, and then they sign off on the form. That might happen in that case, but more often than not, in any other situation, they're not going to sign off on it in day one. So don't go in expecting that. Have it ready because you may want to give the form over to the doctor to have them review it and stuff like that. But don't expect them to complete the form after in a 5-10 minute appointment. That's just not realistic. And then all right, so on the other side of it is okay, so write things down. I mentioned that in the last video. If you watch that one, make sure shit is written down. Don't walk into the appointment just to think you're going to remember everything, because you probably won't. And whatever you don't tell the doctor can't write down on the form on your medical questionnaire, and then it won't be documented. VAC won't receive it, and then it won't be part of your claim and your decision. So making sure that you're actually writing shit down so that the you go in there and you remember everything. Okay. Next, speak in plain language. So the little meme there is, when you tell your doc that you hurt yourself doing IBTS and PWT3, and they're like, "What the hell is a rundown?" If you've seen The Office, but they won't know what IBTS is. They won't know what a PWT3 is. They don't know what Uppy Sees Me Down is. They don't know they won't even necessarily know what a ruck march is, section attack, platoon attack, whatever. They don't know what any of those things are. So make sure that you're prepared to talk about that in plain language. Again, be best if you wrote that down so that they can understand what that is, writing it down in plain language. Bring your medical questionnaire forms with you. Bring any other documentation that you have with you. Physically have it, or have it ready to go in a digital form, or both, ideally both. If your doctor or other medical professional might have those forms available, they might be able to print them off, they might be able to do it for you, but if you have it ready to go for them, then that's better, right? You're not making the doctor waste their time going to find somebody to print something for them. You're just saying, here, this is the form right here. Next thing to remember is that it is not an adversarial process. Okay, you don't go in there expecting that the doctor's going to fight you on everything or whatever. They're going to believe you. They're not bad people. Okay, as long as you're explaining everything as to giving them the right kind of information and explaining things to them. They're not there to fight you. They're not there to be your adversary. They're there to support you. So helping them understand what the system is all about, and helping them understand what is sort of required as they go through this process is going to be beneficial for you. Okay. Next, you're going to know your rating tables. I talked about it in the last video. If you haven't watched that one, go back and watch that video. Know your rating tables, meaning knowing what it is that are the most relevant symptoms to talk about. Talk about all your symptoms for sure, because that's going to help them diagnose you and it's going to help them treat you later on. But make sure that you're definitely talking about the symptoms that are relevant on the rating tables. Okay. And if you don't quite know 100% what it is, right, do your best. And like I said, feel free to reach out to Ben and I, and we'll help you with that as well. Advocate for yourself. So don't be afraid to walk in there and advocate for yourself. So if there's something wrong with your knees, and your x-ray comes back with no, like they say, well, nothing wrong with those knees on this x-ray. Don't be afraid to say, hey, can I get an ultrasound? Can I get an MRI? Can I get this? Can I get that? Or a second opinion, whatever it is that you need to do. Advocate for yourself. Now, the next one is related to that. Don't be a dick. Don't be an asshole. Don't be rude to your doctor. Your doctor's there to help you. Okay, so when you're advocating yourself, do it in a respectful way, in a polite way. This person is trying to help you. Okay, and last but not least, definitely want to stress this enough, is be honest, do not be tough. Be honest, do not be tough. Don't walk in there and brag to the doctor about how it never hurts and you're so tough and you keep powering through and you haven't lost any range of motion. Now is not the time for that. Okay, talk about the symptoms as they are, and your doctor's not going to sit there and think you're a wuss. They're going to be like, okay, yeah, this guy or girl is injured, is fucked up in whatever way. Okay, so don't fake it. Don't pretend that you're fine when you're not. Okay. One thing I want to stress is any reasonable costs that you incur doing your medical testing and exams are covered by Veterans Affairs. So what does that mean? If you need to pay for a chiropractor, any kind of fees, anything like that, including paying for parking, when if you live in a big city and you have to go pay for parking when you go there, keep that receipt and submit it. You do need to submit your receipts, so you can't just say, hey, I just paid $1,000 at the doctor's office, and they say, cool, give me your receipt, and you say, I don't have one. Okay, make sure you have that receipt, especially if you're paying out of pocket, parking, anything like that. They'll also even cover meals if you have to travel. So especially if you live in a remote area and you have to travel 2-3 hours to see a doctor, they will cover your meals. They'll cover your mileage and stuff like that. For stuff like the meals and the mileage, I would call them and double check the specifics of that and what kind of documentation that they need in order to prove that, because it may vary depending on how far you're traveling and the time of day and all sorts of other stuff. So making sure you're documenting that. But I I do know as well, if you live somewhere really remote and you have to travel, well, let's say you have to drive 4, 5, 6, 7 hours to get to the closest city where you can go see the kind of doctor you need to go see. They will do things like cover your hotel room if you have to stay overnight at a place like that. Again, if that's the case and you think you might have to do that, call them in advance and find out the precise way to do that. But they do cover that sort of thing. So just making sure that you cover all your bases and you're doing everything exactly the way that they want you to. But those are all things that are covered. Okay. But 100%, if you need to pay for any particular service, then it is covered by VAC. Keep your receipts if you pay out of pocket, and make sure that you're submitting those. Okay, so what does the doctor actually do? So this whole process, kind of what step by step, what you should expect to see is they're gonna probably meet with you, kind of get a feel for what it is that you're talking about, and then they're gonna order some diagnostic testing. That's gonna vary depending on the kind of condition it is, right? If it's something musculoskeletal, your knees, your back, your shoulders, whatever, they're gonna order like an X-ray, ultrasound, MRI, whatever it is, to kind of look at that. They may order blood work, they may order colonoscopy or an endoscopy, they may order whatever it is that they order. And in addition to having a conversation with them and reporting your symptoms, that'll be kind of what they use to build that package. You need to have some sort of testing like that done for pretty much all of the things that you're going to be applying for. So if your doctor says, no, I'm going to diagnose you with XYZ and we don't need to do a test because it's really obvious, odds are VAC won't accept that. So advocate for yourself and ask them to do a test. And if it's not a relevant test, then that's fine. And there is some circumstances where you don't need to do an actual test. But in most cases that is true. So making sure that you're getting that stuff documented. Okay. Then based on what that testing shows, they're going to provide you with a diagnosis, right? A diagnosis of whatever condition it is that you've got. Okay. And then from there, they're going to complete your medical questionnaire. So, pardon me. From there, they're going to write down your diagnosis. Now, notice I said they provided you with a diagnosis, and then the next step is to write down the diagnosis. If they don't write down the diagnosis, you don't have a diagnosis. So make sure it's actually written down. Okay. Next thing on the medical questionnaire they're going to do is document the severity of your symptoms. So depending on what it is that you're claiming, that process is going to look different. So it could be, range of motion testing, talking about pain, all that kind of stuff, for anything musculoskeletal. It could be something very different if they're looking at your liver or your something neurological or whatever it is. It's always going to be different. Okay. And then they're also going to ideally provide medical corroboration of your causation narrative. So we'll get into what that means in a bit, but we'll skip that for now. Okay. Now, they may submit your completed medical questionnaire on your behalf, or they may not. That's dependent on the doctor and the way they manage things. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end, one way or the other, how that works. But it's your doctor may submit it directly, or they may submit it, they may hand it to you and you submit it. Okay, so I mentioned earlier, you've got provided a diagnosis, okay? Remember, if you do not have a diagnosis, your file gets thrown in the garbage and then they spit on it and then they refuse you, okay? So if you don't have a diagnosis, then your file immediately stops, okay? You have to get a diagnosis. I'm going to bash this into the ground to make sure everybody understands it, but you absolutely 100% need a diagnosis. By the time, you don't need one when you first walk into the doctor's office, but you need one before you submit all your documentation at the end. So by the time that medical questionnaire is completed, it must have a diagnosis on it. So what is a diagnosis? My knees are all fucked up, not a diagnosis, okay? My back hurts is not a diagnosis. My fucking mental health is all fucked up and I'm angry and sad all the time. Again, not a diagnosis, okay? That's, you're going to get a diagnosis of osteoarthritis, patella tendinosis. You're going to get major depressive disorder, gastrointestinal reflux disease, or whatever those diagnoses are. You don't give that to yourself, okay? So you don't give yourself a diagnosis. Your medical provider was going to give you, your healthcare provider is going to give you that diagnosis. You can walk in there and talk about your symptoms. You can say, hey, I have a ringing in my ears, and then the audiologist that you're talking to is going to say, "Oh, that sounds like tinnitus." You're going to walk into the doctor and say, "My knees hurt." They're going to give you an X-ray and you're like, "Oh shit, you've got osteoarthritis in your back, in your knees, and whatever." Okay, that's what that process is going to look like. You're walking in there and saying, "Ow," and they're saying, "Here's why you're saying ow is because you have this condition." Okay, so that's on the doctor to do that. Now, if your diagnosis is not written down on the medical questionnaire, then you do not have a diagnosis. If it's not given to VAC in the way that they want it to be seen, you don't have a diagnosis. Now, if it's written down somewhere else on your documentation, the person from VAC might find it. But if it's 3 p.m. on a Friday and they want to go home early and they're rushing through your paperwork and they're not paying attention and then they got drunk last night and they're hungover or whatever it is, you know, they may find it, they may not. So make sure it's written down where it's supposed to go on the medical questionnaire. I'm going to show you where that is in a minute, but just make sure it's on the medical questionnaire. Okay. Um, this is a screenshot I've taken from a friend of mine who, he's allowed me to share it with permission, and I blocked off all the parts of there with personal information. But if you look closely there, you can see that on that medical questionnaire, there's a bunch of information written down. He's lost extension, he's got pain daily, he's got effusions, so on and so forth. But the diagnosis is not written down. Okay. When the diagnosis is not written down, that means that form could have got sent to VAC, and they could have looked at that and said, "Oh, it sounds like your knees really hurt, but you don't have a diagnosis, so we are refusing you." It is very common that kind of stuff happens. So make sure that you actually get a diagnosis and it is written down. Thankfully, in this case, Buddy was able to go back to the doctor's office and have them write down the diagnosis, which he did have. He had the diagnosis, it just wasn't written down on the form. Okay, so those are two very important things. If it's not written on the form, not written on your medical questionnaire, VAC won't see it, and then they will deny you because they don't know that you have a diagnosis, even if you do. So again, making sure that it's written down. Hopefully I've beaten the bush enough, just because I've seen a lot of people come up with that problem. Okay, so the next is sort of how we go about doing our testing. We talked a little bit about the table of disabilities before, and it talks about range of motion. Now, a lot of times people think in terms of range of motion, that means, oh, I can physically do a full squat. I can physically bend over and touch my toes. I can physically lift my arms above my head. That means I haven't lost range of motion. And according to the VAC policies, no, that's not necessarily true. The question is, does pain restrict your range of motion? So the wording of the policy is pretty vague. The policy basically says, sometimes it hurts too much and that restricts your range of motion. They don't say the pain has to be a 6 out of 10 for us to validate that. So it's kind of up to you and your healthcare provider to decide what that actually means. As a general rule of thumb, if you avoid that kind of movement in your day-to-day life, even if you physically could do it in an emergency or if you really had to, but if you avoid doing that and you try not to do that kind of movement, then you've lost that range of motion. Okay. And when you're actually doing your testing, you want to explain that to the doctor. So that, okay, hey, by the way, I can do this, but I like to not do it because it fucking hurts. So, we got Corporal Bloggin saying my knee hurts, but I can straighten my leg. All right, versus Corporal Bloggin saying my knee hurts a lot, I can straighten my leg, but it hurts even more, and I try not to do it, and I walk with a limp, and blah blah blah. You've completed that thought. You've given the doctor more context in order to make this thing that they understand, and then they ask you to move through that movement, to demonstrate your active range of motion, and you say, hey, remember what I said earlier about how much my knees hurt? This is kind of where I try to stop doing that movement, and this is kind of typically where I wouldn't do it because I try not to go through that motion because of the pain, and the doctor's going to say, okay, cool, I'm going to write down that you lost that range of motion. So again, if you walk in there in the doctor's office and you say, hey, my knee hurts, but I can straighten my leg, that means, again, according to the table of disabilities here, you have essentially normal range of motion and you have pain present on a daily basis and or with movement. So your knee hurts daily, but you no loss of range of motion. Versus, you complete that sentence and you explain it in detail of what it's actually like, and then when you go to demonstrate the movement in the range of motion testing, you say, hey, this is kind of where that would stop because my knee really hurts and this is the kind of movement that I try to avoid. The doctor say, okay, cool, you've lost 15% of extension in this case, right? It could be whatever it is for you, but like you've lost 15% of extension, and that's now worth 18 points, right? Now, if we calculate that out into your lump sum payment, right, that's a difference between $18,000 and $90,000, right? Because you actually explained it to the doctor, you've demonstrated it to him of the kind of movement that you want to avoid doing because of the pain. Okay, those are big differences in terms of how you pay, how much that pays out. So a lot of times when people get their VAC claim back, and they say the VAC says, yeah, this was caused by the military, and we're going to pay you out X amount, and you're like, this is way less than I anticipated, right? Oftentimes it's because you didn't document this kind of stuff properly. So make sure that you understand going into it what that means, and that you've explained that to the doctor as well. And we do have that information that we can share with the doctor as part of the forms I'm going to talk about in a moment. So, alrighty. So again, just last but not least, right? Remember, if pain restricts your range of motion, make sure the doctor is aware of that. Okay, make sure you've told them about it, you've demonstrated that when you're doing the movement, and then they said, okay, it's about right here that I try to stop that, and so they can document that when then they're doing your range of motion testing. Okay. Next, I'm going to talk about the forms briefly. There is a forms catalog. We always recommend bring your form to the doctor. Both have a digital copy and a physical copy. You don't have a printer? Too fucking bad. Go to Staples and print it off. Go to the library and print it off. It costs about 12 cents to pinch off a 3-page form. It costs nothing at the library. Go do it there. It doesn't take that long. It doesn't take that much energy. You're going through this whole process. The last thing you want is some doctor, A, to be pissed off at you because you showed up saying, hey, can you fill out a form that I didn't bring? And then them being less likely to help you. And B, them being like, I don't know, man, come back at another appointment next week and whatever. And now you're getting discouraged, you're getting less interested, you don't really want to do this anymore, and you're not doing it. So go print it off, bring it to the doctor's office. This is worth a lot of money, a lot of support, a lot of having your shit all covered for the rest of your life is worthwhile putting the time and effort in now to do it. I know it's a pain in the ass, but do it. Bring it to the doctor. Don't expect them to have a copy. Also, I highly recommend that you get familiar with your form prior to going up and showing up at the doctor's office. That way, you take a look at the form when the doctor's done, which is one of the things I'm going to recommend, and you've double checked that they've accurately documented what it is that you've described. So if you're familiar with the form and they didn't write down something that you thought they should write down, you can go in there and advocate yourself. Again, don't be a dick, be respectful. Go in there and advocate for yourself and try to ascertain why the doctor didn't write down what you wanted them to, and then hopefully they can correct it right there and you can fix it. Okay, now I'm going to show the rating table and the medical form side by side. This is going to show you why it's important. Oh, I keep going the wrong way. Why it's important to know your rating tables and your medical form at the same time. Okay, so we're going to cover those side by side. So what I've got right here is the knees. All right, so I've got my medical form for the knees, and I've got my rating table for the knees here. So you can see here, right in big bold letters, all under your tombstone data and your doctor's information there. Again, doctor can mean any number of things. Not always a doctor, it can be a nurse practitioner, blah, blah, blah. But confirmed medical diagnosis of knee conditions, right here, this big red box right here. Your medical provider, your healthcare provider, your doctor is going to have to write down what your diagnosis is for your left knee and for your right knee. Okay, now, if they don't write that down, right, the VAC's going to throw your shit out. So making sure, double check that they've written down. Again, advocate for yourself, do it respectfully, don't be a dick, but make sure it's written down there. As well, if you have the same diagnosis in your right knee and your left knee, it needs to be written down twice. You need to have the diagnosis written down for your right knee and the diagnosis written down for your left knee. If it's only written in one place, VAC might think you only have that diagnosis in your right knee, even though everything's all the same for both of these for the rest of it. It's not written down in the left one. You didn't check the box. The bureaucrat wanted to go home early and they didn't bother to check with you. They just denied your claim for your left knee but left your right knee in, okay? Because that's where it was written down. So next is your medical history, right? That's where your doctor can corroborate your medical medical information there. So that's an important thing to write down. They can write down that, hey, this is the kind of thing that would be caused by somebody who was doing this kind of job and doing this kinds of repetitive actions, Next, that's kind of a little bit covered up with the box there, but you see pain. So you got pain is no pain, intermittent pain, daily pain, and then describing the severity of the pain, right? So if your doctor checks off that, they say you've got this diagnosis, this is the kind of thing that would be caused by their military service, and then they check off daily right here, then that's worth at least 4 points, right? It can go up from there, but it can't go down because you've you've got the diagnosis. The doctor has said that it is caused by your military service, and you check off that your symptoms are daily pain. Um, then that means you have at least essentially normal range of motion and pain present on a daily basis and or with movement. Okay, so that would be on the first page. They're going to repeat that for the left side and the right side. And then the next is the back page, the second page of the form. Okay, a big part here is the physical examination. So they're going to check your leg length. They're going to check like in this case flexion and extension, so how much you can move your knees in both direction. Again, remember that pain can restrict range of motion, so even if you can physically do the movement, if you try to avoid it in your day-to-day life, make sure that the doctor's aware of that and that you've accurately talked about it. You're not trying to be a tough guy, you're talking about how much it hurts, and explain that to your doctor. And then when you're doing your active range of motion testing, meaning they're saying, okay, do a full squat, extend your leg, whatever it is that they're doing to test you, you're saying this is the kind of place where it gets to hurt too much that I don't want to do it anymore. Okay, and then you've got your other. So and again, that's if you've lost your range of motion, right? They're gonna it's 13, 18, 26, whatever it is, depending on how much range of motion you've lost. So they're documenting all of that. Your knee stability, everything like that's gonna be all documented on this form, and then you can the person from VAC will compare that to the table of disabilities when they are doing your assessment sometime down the road. Okay, and then up here you got other treatment information and everything like that. That's that can be relevant, where they put any additional information that might be relevant to prove that causation and whatnot. So that's what the form is going to look like. Again, it's important to know what that looks like before you go talk to your doctor, so that when they fill it out, you can take a second look at it and verify that everything is filled out the way you want it to be filled out. Okay, because the reason we do that is because before you submit the forms, like I said, the doctor may either send them directly to VAC, or they're going to hand them to you and you are going to upload them. Different providers do it different ways, and it really depends on the individual. So if they're giving it to you and you're going to upload it to VAC yourself, great, you have an opportunity to check that over. You're going to double check they have a diagnosis. You're going to double check that they accurately documented the severity of your symptoms and that they've done something to corroborate your causation narrative. If they haven't done those things, politely and respectfully go back and see the doctor and clarify that and say, hey, you wrote this. I thought I said this. Did I not make that clear? And if I did, I apologize, but can we make that change? The doctor's either going to say, oh yeah, you know what, I didn't understand you. I didn't, whatever, I'm happy to make that change, and they'll change it. Or they're going to say, no, I don't want to write that down. That's not what I would do it. Okay. And then again, conversely, if the doctor's going to submit the forms on your behalf, before they do, please ask to see it before they submit it, and you go through that same process. Hey, did they diagnose it? Did they document your symptoms accurately? And did they corroborate your causation narrative? Okay. Again, if that's the case and that doctor says, yeah, okay, I made that change, good to go, then you can submit it, great. And if not, they say, know what, I'm not making that change, don't submit the form. If you don't like what the doctor put down there, don't submit the form. Go get a second opinion, go find a different doctor, go talk to somebody else. You do not have to submit a form and to VAC that you don't want to. So make sure that it says what you want it to say before you submit it to VAC, and then upload it or have the doctor's office send it in on your behalf. Okay. So I've mentioned this a whole bunch now, is preparation is key. Make sure your shit is all written down ahead of time. You know how to talk about this, you know what you need to explain to the doctor. So one of the things that we've done here at VPEN is created a checklist, which I've put a link to here, and it'll be linked down in the description below. The first page here, it says to your healthcare provider, and it says, I am submitting a disability claim through Veterans Affairs as a current or former member of the Canadian Forces or RCMP. Presumably you're one of those things, to document service-related health conditions and access, support, and treatment. Okay, as part of the process, I need this, including a diagnosis, a description of my symptoms, and it explains how it affects my daily functioning and so on. Additionally, it says, the Veterans Affairs applies the benefit of the doubt principle, meaning that you don't need to prove this beyond a shadow of a doubt, and it also mentions that the the medical professional will not be required to answer any further questions on this if they don't want to. They can if they want to, if VAC reaches out for them, which they rarely do at all if VAC reaches out. But if they do, the doctor can be like, you know what, I don't want to deal with this, and they don't have to. Okay, if that's the case, then you might have to go find another doctor. But that's at least that your doctor will know they don't have to do it if they don't want to. Now, the reason I put all that in there is to explain to the doctor, as I mentioned at the beginning, doctor doesn't know what the fuck is going on with the military. They may have heard of Veterans Affairs before, but they don't know anything about this process. They don't know a lot of stuff. So this sort of helps them orient to why is this guy coming into my office and saying he needs me to fill out a form to say his knee hurts. Okay. That's why we're doing this. So it's giving the context for that, saying to the healthcare provider, hey, and if you walk in and your healthcare provider doesn't need this information, that's fine. You don't need to show it to them, but it's just there explaining what it is that you need from them, and why it is that you're doing this, and so on. So that's the first page of this form here. The second one is sort of your basic tombstone data here. Next part here is your symptom tracking. So I've got a link here to the table of disabilities, so you can go find it if you need it. And then you're going to write down your symptom, your frequency. You're going to give some notes on how it affects you, and so on and so forth. Okay, you can write all that stuff down there so that when you go in and you're trying to talk to the doctor, right, you've got that stuff written down, ready to go, and so you can explain it to the doctor. Okay. You're also got a spot here to write down, as I mentioned before, your causation narrative and your description of your career. Again, we're focusing on things that would have contributed to that. So, like if you are going in complaining about a knee thing, you don't need to talk about how you had to write a lot of PERs. You don't have to talk about the kinds of things that aren't relevant to what would have affected your knee. But you could give some basic information, meaning I'm an infantry soldier, I'm a bosun, I'm an AVN tech, whatever it is, and this is the kind of thing I would do on a day-to-day basis. The kinds of things that contributed to what I caused this injury is X, Y, and Z, and that's why I think that this is relevant. Okay, next thing here is just a medical form information. Making sure that you're talking about your history and onset, your functional limitation, the findings on your physical exam, all those relevant details that's going to go on that medical questionnaire. So make sure that that's all included. Okay, if you have any past medical documentation as well, past x-rays, past medical history, physiotherapy reports, you can bring those with you, include them. You can check off which ones you have. Okay, and then any notes on that documentation that you have, any testing that you have either done in the past or that you are scheduled to do in the future, and then any other shit you want to talk to your doctor about, right? You can write that down at the bottom there. So the actual document here is available at the link down below. You're in the description. You're more than welcome to use that. In fact, I encourage you to. Even if you're not using this one specifically, you should be doing the things that are on this form. Again, that's going to make sure that when you show up to the doctor's office, the doctor understands why you're there and what you're doing, and understands how they can help you. Right? They understand what it is that you did as part of your job, and why do you think that part of your job affected your career, as well as making sure that they have all the documentation and information that they need over and above that, especially if you have past medical records, anything like that, you're going to document that and bring it in as well. So that's it for this one here. Again, I'm Greg from VPEN, and if you have any questions, anything like that, please email me, please email Ben, Greg at vpen.ca, Ben at vpen.ca. Again, our contact info is in the description below. Please look at it. We are more than happy to help anyone who's a veteran serving member of the Canadian Forces or RCMP go through this process. And again, we don't charge any money for that, so we're more than happy to help you out. Yeah, so that's it for today. Next video is going to be about uploading your documents and that whole fun part of waiting your long period until you get a decision, and what to expect through that. So in the meantime, go drink some water, and then I'll see you for that video.